the lights, lock your doors, and get ready for a frightful time. To start us off tonight, I will be sharing the first tale. A little bit of a short tale, but first, a little bit about me. I'm a retired public school speech-language pathologist, lover of New England, especially in the fall, collector and wearer of over 8,000 lapel pins, just one at a time, performer of local cable broadcasts of old radio shows, proud parent to Pepper, our beloved rescue dog from Puerto Rico. And those who know me know that I have a certain connection to a jolly old elf every December. I'm very active in various local community theaters, and I've been on the board of the Concord Players for the last 7 years. While I've been in many theater productions on the Theater 3 stage, I suspect my most recent appearance as Gomez Addams may have led to my being asked to act as your host tonight. Or maybe it's the fact that I possess a large personal library of nonfiction ghost stories. Or maybe there's some other reason. Well, anyway, first short story. Here is The Old Man in Yellow by Bernhardt J. Herwood. There's hardly anything more unnerving than being followed by a hideous stranger on a lonely road at night. When the stranger proves to be non-human, but that's getting ahead of the story. It happened a few years ago to a young man named Elwyn Thomas, who happened to be visiting friends in a small village in South Wales. It was a warm June night, and darkness was just beginning to fall when he left his friends to return to the country inn where he was staying. Judging by the past experience he'd had, he reckoned on reaching it by about 9 o'clock. It was exactly 8:30 when he said goodnight. He was completely alone in the gathering dusk, and the only sounds were the occasional cries of night birds and the crunch of his own footsteps on the gravel road. Being neither superstitious nor afraid of anything, he walked briskly along, glancing now and then towards the banks of an old canal off to one side of the road. After 10 minutes, he began experiencing a peculiar, creepy sensation, as if he were being watched. On an impulse, he stopped, turned around, and gasped involuntarily. There, no more than a yard behind him, suspended in midair at eye level, was the most hideous face he had ever seen. The putty-colored skin was drawn tightly over the features, except for the forehead, which was lined with deep wrinkles. Thin, seemingly bloodless lips formed a crooked grin over a half-open, toothless mouth. The cheeks were hollow and corpse-like, and the eyes were wild, luminous, and piercing. Wrapped around the ghastly object were 2 pieces of old yellow calico, one under the jaw and tied on top of his head, and other over the forehead and tied behind. Unable to help himself, Thomas turned and began running as fast as he could. After having covered about 100 yards, he stopped to catch his breath and turned around again. To his horror, the face was still there, as if he hadn't moved an inch. On an impulse, he dropped down, grabbed a handful of gravel, and hurled it at the face, then turned again and ran. When he finally reached the inn, he stopped at the path leading off the road and looked back again. The head was still behind him. Cautiously, he backed up in the direction of the inn and was surprised to observe that this time the head remained above the road, grinning somewhat contemptuously. Taking courage, he decided to go back, confront the apparition, and question it. But as he approached, the head began receding, its glowing eyes fixed almost malevolently on his own. Now he felt as though he had to follow. Down the road he went slowly, like a sleepwalker, until the head disappeared over a stone wall surrounding a little graveyard not far from the inn. Suddenly, he felt everything begin to spin, and then he lost consciousness. When he came to again, it was late at night. He had lain at the foot of the churchyard wall for more than 2 hours, groping through the darkness until he found his way back to the inn. It was with great relief that he finally retired to bed and to a restless night filled with bad dreams. When he told the innkeeper about his experience the next day, he learned that he had not been having hallucinations. An eccentric old recluse, fitting the exact description of the apparition, had once lived in a cottage whose ruins were quite near to the place where the face had disappeared. No one could remember exactly how long the old man had been dead, but they knew it had been many years since he had been last seen alive. And I suspect that story will be mild compared to many of the other stories you'll hear tonight. Thank you. Ooh, that's a lovely picture.